Adam Yates to UAE. He was on Ineos for a couple of seasons. He didn't perhaps achieve what they both wanted from it. He won Catalonia with the stage, and then this year he won Deutschland Tour with the stage. No Grand Tour podium. I don't think he podiumed a Healy Monument. Oh no, sorry, he did. He came third last year. I lied. He had a good end to the year, and he might do so again this year. Like, he's worth a lot of money because he's can win World Tour GC stage races and World Tour one-day races, but he's not going to push Ineos to the next level at the Tour. And I don't even think he's going to. You can't rely on him to win the Giro either, especially when you've got C-Rod and Sivakov. So to me, it seemed like they just didn't need him at this phase of their rebuild. Is that or do you think Ineos should have re-signed him and he's still one of their top GC guys and other guys aren't at his level for next year? Whether you're just starting out on your cycling journey or are looking for those final tune-ups ahead of a big event or race, Zwift is the online cycling platform that makes things fun. There are 9 different worlds, thousands of kilometers of virtual road, including replicas of real-world climbs like Alpe du Zwift. There's workouts, training plans, events and races for every level of rider. The massive community means you're never alone. So if you want to find out more about Zwift or indeed to start your free 7-day trial, head to Zwift.com down below.
He was a consistent one-week racer, as you mentioned. Like, he's doing great at UAE Tour, those kind of races, Catalonia and so forth, but it only really came out in that Vuelta where he ended up 4th just behind Jack Haig. And is 4th in that Vuelta? Arguably, he could have gotten more than 4th if he played it tactically better on stage 20, but that's not a certainty. But is that good enough to stay at Ineos? And I'd argue his Grand Tour consistency has not been good enough to really promote him to a level where he is GC leader at the Tour de France, for example, straightforward. That's not the case for me. Maybe that Vuelta changed something in him that we haven't seen yet, where he is more consistent in Grand Tours, but I believe I haven't seen that in 2022, for example. But now, when we look at what he has to offer for Ineos, well, not much, like you said. The youngsters at Ineos are growing. They're growing. Carlos Rodriguez, for example, is taking a step up. And we see other youngsters that are going to prove more in the future, like a Pidcock winning on Alpe d'Huez, arguably going to be a GC rider at some point in his career, that type of stuff. And next to that, Ineos is, from my perspective and from multiple sources on the internet, also slightly reducing their budget. That has been likely a reason that both Carapaz and Yates are leaving, I'd say, because let's say their salary stays the same or goes slightly up. Obviously, they paid more for Pidcock now this year after that crazy extension he had, but even if their budget goes up a tiny bit, I'm guessing they likely re-sign a Carapaz over an Adam Yates still, right?
Yeah, and also there's the huge Pidcock contract. So, like, even if the budget hasn't gone down, like, it's been eaten up. Like, I don't think that Van Baarle was probably on decent money. Carapaz, yeah, decent money. But yeah, that Pidcock deal's got to be a big one. I don't know. I think it is about the money because Yates, I reckon he was being paid the same or more than Vingegaard was before the Tour this year. So, like, that's a lot for someone who wasn't near winning or even podiuming the Tour.
Yeah, and Ineos apparently did give an offer towards Adam Yates. I read that on Velo News recently. Apparently, it was too low for Adam Yates. And then Bike Exchange and BNB were both interested. BNB, who got a gigantic bag of money from the new sponsor for next year. He's now going to UAE. And the question then is, why did he choose for UAE? And what does Adam Yates offer towards UAE Team Emirates? And there's multiple aspects there. I think when it comes to Adam Yates' side, there's probably also some involvement when it comes to the finances, when it comes to joining UAE. That's always the case for a lot of riders. But when it comes to the sporting merit here, what opportunities do you see for an Adam Yates at UAE Team Emirates? Because they've got loads of GC riders now. They've got Ayuso coming through at the Vuelta. Pogacar still on the top level, obviously. We need to consider Almeida existing. What do you see as Adam Yates' role within UAE?
I think it's to score points because Machin said that they want to score a lot of points. They do so many non-World Tour races. That's why they have signed Hodge, Ackerman, Milano. Because when you look at it and you're thinking, why would you sign Ackerman for good money when you have Pog to the Tour and other riders like Almeida going to the Giro? And I think they just want to score a lot of points, which, listen, if that's their goal, that's their goal. I don't think anyone cares. Like, does anyone care about the UCI ranking? No, because it's meaningless, because there's no money attached to it
The teams
at the
that
top.
relegate.
If you get relegated, yeah, it starts to matter. But whether you come first, second, or third, like, do you remember who came first in the UCI ranking in 2018? No, I don't know. You remember who wins the Tour, who wins the Giro, who wins Paris-Roubaix? Like, not. If you have a budget that big, sending guys to triple stack the top 5 of Trofeo Laguelia is, in my opinion, a waste of time. It's good for development, maybe to practice if you're going to apply the same strategies from that race to Lombardia, but to score points, yeah. And I think Yates, because when has Yates been a good domestique, Benji? Like, I know he, like, for Thomas, Murder Pagua 20 seconds, like, when has he been a good domestique?
I agree in that aspect, and I think it's also kind of a consequence of the strategies of Ineos, though. In that Tour de France, for example, I feel like they were still holding Adam Yates' positioning GC quite all right at that point, and perhaps they weren't going to offer that up just to help out Thomas. But I agree that he hasn't really been the rider that I would see as the all-out domestique. Nonetheless, he can evolve into that. I think we were suggesting similar for Micah before he joined UAE, where we weren't sure whether he was going to be able to fill that domestique role, as he had done it very limitedly beforehand. Like, he was always going for his own stuff, for even KOM jerseys back in the day, and stage wins in the years of what is it, Saxo Bank, the yellow jerseys that they had back in the yellow blue ones that year. Like, we saw Micah evolve in that. Perhaps that Adam Yates can also evolve from the situation he's in into, for example, let's say he goes to 1 week races, because I think that's going to be definitely a role that he does. 1 week races to score those points to get UAE as the number 1 team in the world. And also because he's bloody good at it, 1 week race is also very important. They were going to try and do a 1-2 at the UAE Tour, most likely, because that's what Yates and Pogacar usually do at the UAE Tour. I bet it's like the UAE Prince or whatever, he was like, well, who's this guy that's like making it more difficult for us at the UAE Tour? Sign him. I want to get rid of him. We can't have this happen. He might actually beat us at some point. So they're probably trying to make sure that they are so secure when it comes to the UAE Tour. But next to that, I do believe that they are going to use him as a super domestique and co-leader at some point in a Grand Tour. But when it comes to the Tour de France, I don't believe his consistency is good enough to be a co-leader. And there I see him more as an attempt at a super domestique. But I guess we'll see if that comes out, because I'm not 100% certain.
The Micah comparison's a good one. He joined UAE in 2021 when he was a similar age, 30, turning 31. He had spent a lot of his career, perhaps his peak, chasing Grand Tour results. From 2017 to 2021, Micah didn't win a race, but he ran top 10 in the Vuelta, in the Giro, 13th in the Vuelta, and 12th in the Giro as well. So similar to Yates, although Yates is a much, much better one-day racer. And then Mike has been excellent for Pogacar. So I think that's a good comparison. I think Yates is a good co-leader for Lombardia, for Quebec, for
Yeah.
Montreal, for maybe Liège. He is, like, his punch is really, really good on the sort of steep stuff. So I think pairing him with Pogacar, because Almeida's on paper should be good at it, but his handling, his descending is an issue. Ayuso will be good too, but Yates is he came third last year, so he's a really good guy to have. And maybe Pogacar doesn't want to do Lombardia this year or next year because he's doing the Vuelta and Worlds, or he's doing something else. So I get it from that aspect. I would have liked to have seen a team like Yates is more valuable for his points than for his potential Grand Tour results, because he can score so much in really,
Yeah.
really valuable races. Like he scored 425 across the Canadian races. He's ranked 13th in the world. I'm just trying to think who would be that team, because Intermarché already qualified. Lotto don't have the money. Israel, this is the problem with Israel, Benji. They've just made themselves such an unappealing destination.
Yeah.
Like with the equipment, with the scheduling, with, from an outside perspective, just how the operation is running, that I wouldn't, if money was equal between Israel and UAE, you'd go to UAE every time. So yeah, are you surprised no other team splashed the cash for him, like a Bora? Bora like to stack these sort of riders.
Yeah, but Bora have already stacked quite a bit of riders last year when it comes to finances. That after also getting rid of Sagan's salary and so forth. But when it comes to this year, I think Bora probably has their crop of GC riders that they want to have. Perhaps they want to expand that more in the future, but they have their crop after last year with a Vlasov and so forth in the team and so forth. But Calderman now leaving. Let's keep that in mind as well. But when it comes to UAE, it's also, I don't know if a lot of teams can actually compete with their finances in general. Like when we talk about Ineos, we're talking about them potentially reducing their salaries, if not staying the same. I'm guessing it's lowering a tiny bit, though, from my perspective on the situation, though. And when it comes to Jumbo, that's another team that can compete with UAE about salaries, but I'm pretty sure Jumbo's salary is also still under UAE salaries
Yeah,
in general. And what other teams can compete with that, because the gap is quite significant to all the other mid-tier teams. And then we're looking at the team that was actually in the running to get Adam Yates, according to Velo News, which was a BNB with 19 million in their bag suddenly. That's an intriguing aspect, but is also going to a pro team that is not a proven pro team, that has not really displayed their plans to the worldwide public yet. We don't know what their plans are going to be, how they're going to take it on with that money, what they're going to do there. So there's that aspect. Bike exchange is another option. They saved themselves most likely from relegation this season, is how I think the situation is right
yeah,
now.
they're
They're
looking
looking
good.
relatively safe, especially after the mixed relay gave them a bunch of points. Oh, can't believe it. Anyway, that's another destination that was interested, but he came from that. Perhaps he doesn't want to go back to that situation. EF got Carapaz, so they don't need an enemy Yates anymore. So it's starting to get limited, eh?
BNB's the one. You're right bringing that up, in that they want to get the wild cards. They want to become a world tour team. They need to start scoring bulk loads of points in about 5 months from now. And same with Total Energy, could have probably sprung for Yates. They have good equipment already, so Total would have been a good spot. But if the money's equal between those two teams and UAE, who are already way better than those teams, yeah, well, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So that's Yates to UAE.